not fouling up 3. I get philosophically in many situations, but not against Damian Lillard. The first time, whatever. The second time, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I don't know.
How are you not fouling him up 3 in the end of the first overtime? What are you doing?
How are you letting him on an island get to that step back?
What's going on? And by the way, that step back, wow.
This is one that will be on, NBA classics for till the end of time. I mean, when you sign up to watch a playoff game, what you expect is not always what gets delivered. But this exceeded all expectations. Denver wins 147-140 in a Game 5 over Portland, which has been a highly competitive series.
Double OT. Woo!
Double overtime. And we saw one of the most unbelievable performances in the history of the NBA. In fact, no one has ever hit more three-pointers in a playoff game than Damian Lillard's 12 for 17. He scored 55 points. He was 17 of 24 from the field, and he lost the game. I mean, awful. It seems impossible that you could lose a game with that kind of performance. Steph Curry is tweeting about it. Kevin Durant. I mean, it felt like everyone was watching this game that was unbelievably on NBA TV. They put it on NBA TV, and there it felt like everyone in the NBA community was watching this game because we knew what we are witnessing is something so insanely special.
KD called it a spiritual experience.
Godlike.
Yeah.
Godlike, he said.
It was. He's God mode.
God mode. I mean, he was.
Yes.
Look, there are so many things that happened in this game that I felt were huge, and yet by the end of the game, I was having trouble remembering them. Like, that's how
so many.
Yes, it's how ridiculous it got. Like, how long ago did it seem that Austin Rivers got a phantom foul called on him at the end of regulation? I mean, we got 2 overtime periods after that. One of the things that I had written down in my notes was Nurkic fouls out, which was it's just insane for him. He has got to know his level of importance to that team. He challenges an Aaron Gordon dunk. Now, in fairness, Gordon did go and miss the free throw, so it did save them a bucket, but it's not worth getting his 6th foul there, and that was with 4 minutes left to go. And the reason that I wrote that down was because this morning I had seen John Schumann post. And again, it's a very small sample size, but I do think it's relevant towards what's happening in the playoffs. He posted all of these numbers about on-court, off-court numbers for different guys. And number one, in terms of the disparity of what his team does on-court, off-court, was actually Dorian Finney-Smith for Dallas. Then it was Bogdan Bogdanovic for Atlanta. And then it was Jusuf Nurkic for Portland. I mean, it's followed by LeBron James and Damian Lillard. And we talked about how Nurkic is, like, their defense is absolutely atrocious. And they don't have anybody big except for, Kanter to play, at the end when they tried that for a little bit. They put him in every single screen. Monty Morris is banging threes. Monty Morris was awesome tonight.
He was incredible. Incredible.
But Nurkic
28 points off the bench.
Yeah, Nurkic fouled out with 4 minutes left in regulation. The thing ends up going 2 overtimes. The only guy that scored was Damian Lillard. I think he had their last 17 points.
I got those stats. Going back to the last shot in regulation, the 3 that he hit to tie it up, to send it to the first overtime. 20 points on 7 of 9 shooting, Damian Lillard, in the last second of regulation, overtime, and the double OT. All other Blazers, since that moment, Dame tied the game in regulation. 2 points on 1 of 19 shooting. 2 points on 1 of 19. Awful. It's horrific.
You think about some of those possessions. You've got Covington missing a dunk. You've got CJ stepping out of bounds.
Those dunks, 2 of them. On the putback, he went for a putback dunk. And then on the other opportunity, he went for a poster slam on the contest by Jokic. Listen, watch what the Spurs did for 20 years and go for a layup.
Or
go for a layup in those moments. It was just easy for me to say watching from home.
That's
but
right.
like I feel like in a moment like that, I think the layup was a safer bet. But
what I would have done is just pass the ball to Damian Lillard every time I touched it. I mean, that's what I would have done.
Like, I feel like this game. Also, like, credit to Denver. I mean, like, they overcame the fact Michael Malone was foolish and not following up three, not once, but twice against one of the greatest.
Are you sure it was only twice? It felt like the guy hit game-tying shots 5 times in that game.
Michael Malone is a very good coach who is on many top 3 coach of the year ballots. Not fouling up 3. I get philosophically in many situations, but not against Damian Lillard. The first time, whatever. The second time, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I don't know.
You're not following him up 3 in the end of the first overtime. What are you doing?
How are you letting him on an island get to that step back?
What's going on? And by the way, that step back, wow. Like the footwork and the balance and the body control and the touch and the guts to hit that shot in that moment. Damian Lillard, what we just saw, 55 points on 17 of 24 shooting, is one of the greatest offensive performances I will ever see in my entire lifetime. One of the greatest clutch performances that we've seen in sports. I mean, I can't think of many great clutch performances in a loss like of this level with the shot making that he had. It's sad because this Portland team, this is what I've been hammering since before the season. Like, I get Blazers fans being pissed at me for saying they were comically overrated before the year. Totally understand. Tonight's game is why. You have Dame go off for 55 with an all-time performance, a game that's going to be replayed over and over for years to come because it was that great, and your team goes 2 for 19 in overtime. Your team can't get stops down the stretch. Your team doesn't have enough support behind him. Your team can only rely on Enes Kanter, the guy who became a meme because his head coach said on the bench, can't play Kanter. I look at the rest of this roster, CJ McCollum going 7 for 22, stepping out of bounds late in the game. I look at this team and it's like Damian Lillard deserves better. He just does. You can't bet against Dame. You can never count out a team with him because of how special he is. But it's just unfortunate that against a team that just lost their second best player to a torn ACL a little over a month ago, that they're down in a series against them and not pummeling them. Damian Lillard deserves better than the supporting cast that he has.
I am just telling you this as a friend. I would slow down just a little bit, only because of the way this is all playing out.
It's not over. They could win the series.
No, because look, I think they will win Game 6. That's my opinion.
They could.
Okay,
yeah, they could win the whole series.
And then 7, all bets are off. And then it's feeding into. And we're going to get to all these games, but just much different situations all around. If we looked up and either of these teams are in the Western Conference Finals, it's not going to surprise us anymore.
Not a shocker. Because not a shocker. And it doesn't change my perspective that the supporting cast needs to be better. And maybe I'll look silly in the end. But I'll tell you what, if they go far, if they go to the West Finals, if they even go to the NBA Finals, it's because of Damian Lillard.
Well, there's no question about that. There's no question about that. I mean, look, there's a lot of rough supporting casts around there that are being pretty exposed by one player being out of the lineup. And I will give Portland credit because they have had big injuries the last couple of years and have been able to withstand them. And now, look, that was just there's only been 2 50-point, 10 3-pointer performances in NBA history in the playoffs. They're both him. They're both him. And I forgive me, God, I wish I knew who tweeted this out. But it was such it stuck with me as I read it. They said, "What would we think of Damian Lillard if Steph Curry never existed?" Now, maybe Damian Lillard's not playing like Damian Lillard if Steph Curry never existed, right? Because of how much the game changed because of those Warriors teams. But you really do. You put that in perspective. He was in the background, especially of those Curry, winning the MVP, winning the title, all this kind of stuff. And it's taken a long time for him to get full credit, first team All NBA, that kind of the accolades and everything else. But I mean, he's right there, man. I mean, he's right there with anybody in the league. That is a bona fide superstar. Like
Dame has a chance to be an all-time great. You know,
Really?
we watched in this game two guys that have a chance to be all-time greats, Damian Lillard and Nikola Jokic. Some of the plays that Jokic makes when like Enes Kanter or Nurkic are right in his face, and he manages with like no space to still launch a three and sink it when he's double teamed in the post. The pass that he looped over the top of the defense to Michael Porter Jr. for the corner three where Robert Covington broke his ankles as he recovered. That pass.
Look, Kev, to your point about Portland and kind of what's around Dame and not delivering. The truth is this, bro, it's Monty Morris and it's Austin Rivers hitting monster shots for the other team. You know what I'm saying?
Morris is a really good.
But I mean, those are the guys that are making those shots, right? Monty Morris, he's probably not taking those. He's not taking those shots if Jamal Murray's, available. Austin Rivers might not be on the team if Jamal Murray is available. Yeah. And yet these are guys that are delivering. One of the craziest things.
Marcus Howard gave pretty good minutes too off the bench.
Well, the other thing is this could have been, and this is the way the playoffs goes. All of that stuff, the Malone stuff and whatever else, it'll all be forgotten. It just will. Because you won, it all gets forgotten.
Exactly.
Kevin, they were up 8 with a minute left in overtime. You are up 8. This would have been one of the most unbelievable collapse. I mean, up 8 with a minute. And Damian Lillard hits that 3 with a minute to cut it again. Now you're up 5 with a minute left to go. Who loses that game, right? And they ended up winning the game. So all that goes away. But I mean, you don't see a lot of 8-point leads get disintegrated in 1 minute's time. And yet Denver did have that happen to them. This is so evenly matched. It's such a good series, and I want it to go 7. Round. I want to see them both in that situation against each other because you got two guys at peak of powers, between Lillard and Jokic. Yeah, and they really, they don't have as good a supporting cast as a lot of their peers, and yet they are dragging their teams to this point to where they're playing so well. And it's a really good series. And that every time he would make one of those, that's just very few times do you watch something that's truly jaw-dropping to where everybody's like, oh my God. My phone exploded. I felt like everybody I know was watching that, and we're all in unison going, oh my God, this is insane. He just can't be stopped.
It was something else, man. I mean, I think these are the types of games that, it's just special. It really is special just to see these guys perform at this level. Damian Lillard, the shots he hit, Jokic, the plays he made, you said earlier that like Denver's bench and Portland's bench, the lack of a supporting cast, like it's true. I mean, for Denver, part of it's due to injuries, and with Portland, like it's, just young guys haven't developed and other guys are like Nurkic was out and all that. But, I think you also do got to give some credit to some of the guys on that Denver bench. Like they really played some strong minutes in this game. I think Marcus
big response for Porter. I mean, he had a dreadful game 4.
Michael Porter got going early. They called the first play for him, 10 for 13 on the night. I know. I don't know what it touches. The tracking stats aren't out yet. It seemed like his touches were up from the first 4 games in the series. I'm curious to see what the numbers are after the game. But, Marcus Howard hitting some big shots, playing some quality minutes for them. Monte Morris, as you said earlier, just remarkable performance for him. Like he's always been, Morris since he was at Iowa State, was always a guy who just was steady. Like he came off the bench in the NBA immediately, could steady an offense. But for him to have big scoring nights, 28 points, and to hit some of the shots that he did, that's over the top stuff, man. And like he's capable of it. And you get JaMychal Green and Paul Millsap giving some quality minutes as well. That Denver bench, they're not necessarily the biggest names, but those guys came out big in this performance tonight.
Also, huge free throws from Morris. I know he missed the one that enabled Dame to tie it, but he also hit the big ones at the end of the game.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
In the double overtime. He stuck with it. And he had some big threes when they needed it too. I don't know why the hell CJ McCollum was going under the screen. I mean, the kid had been shooting fireballs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why are you going under? Because, of course, every time they saw Enes Kanter out there, Jokic ran straight to the top, set the screen, and it's like, okay. And the guards just got to try to stay with him because Kanter's not going to, I mean, there's nothing he could do. They ended up just abandoning the Kanter thing and playing small.
It's tough, man. Like, you know, Terry Stotts, a lot of Blazers fans would want him gone if they lose the series, and understandably so for some, you know, different reasons. The offensive system, you know, that's just the fact you're moving within the flow, not all out play calling. Maybe it would be better to have somebody who is more hands-on with play calls, the defensive rotations and whatnot. But like, you look at the bench and it's like he doesn't have a lot of options here. You know, you have Enes Kanter as your backup center. Zach Collins has not developed and hasn't stayed healthy. He went to Rondae Hollis-Jefferson for 9 minutes, and in those 9 minutes, the Blazers were a minus 21 in Hollis-Jefferson's 9 minutes. And he was a guy they signed weeks before the season ended, you know, to give themselves a chance with like a small ball. Like we'll talk about Bruce Brown later on when we talk about the Nets and Celtics, that type of guy who can be a short roll option for you. But like Hollis-Jefferson is in theory a quality player, but hasn't been at many of his stops in the league. So for Stotts, it's like, where are the options? Where's the options on the bench? The young guys just haven't developed. Nasir Little is not ready yet. Anthony Simons is not ready yet. Like Zach Collins, like I said earlier, not staying healthy, not ready yet. It's just unfortunate that some of their draft picks that on paper make sense and maybe could turn into quality players years from now just aren't ready yet for a moment like this, on a night like this, when Damian Lillard put up the numbers that he did. It's just unfortunate that this night is going to be remembered in a loss. And
one of the good recent moves that they did make was the drafting of Trent Jr., but they used that piece to acquire Powell.
Yeah, and Powell 5 for 14 tonight, 13 points. Yeah. And like Powell's had some great moments. Like, don't get us wrong here, but I don't think that decision.
If he gets paid a fortune.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we don't know. Like, they clearly didn't want to pay Gary Trent to make that deal, but that doesn't mean Norman Powell for sure will stay, because there's going to be a heck of a lot of other teams that would love to have Norman Powell on their roster.
Oh, for sure. And you know, to read the stories, I think Norman Powell's representatives think that he's going to be getting, you know, like a $20 million contract. You know what I'm saying?
From what I understand, there's a strong possibility of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys that shooting guard market. I mean, there's going to be guys out there that are getting a lot of money.
He's a good player, man. Like,
he is a good player.
That's why they made the deal. To me, here's what I like. We'll have more like breakdowns of the Blazers, like depending on what happened to the series. But my theory is this: if you're the Blazers, it makes sense to have Norman Powell on the roster if you plan to trade CJ McCollum. I don't think keeping all three makes a heck of a lot of sense.
That's fair.
But if your plan is to flip McCollum elsewhere, keep Norman Powell, pay him whatever it takes. A Powell-Lillard backcourt, because of Powell's defensive ability and his shot-making ability, makes a heck of a lot more sense if you can flip McCollum for a bigger wing or a big, or it's like whatever it might be. It just makes sense to me. But we'll see what happens. There's a lot more time to discuss theoretical possibilities, but that just makes it make more sense for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I think we are going to be able to talk by our Friday show. I think we're going to be able to talk about a Game 7 and how great this is going to be, that we're going to get one, because I would assume Portland will take care of business in a series that's so evenly matched.
We'll see, man.
You know, I would think that they will win Game 6 and force a Game 7. But look, Denver has flipped the tables on teams, you know, the last couple of years. And so it's certainly a possibility they could close them out.